You move through a crowded Roman street as a magistrate approaches, attendants clearing a path ahead of him. The crowd shifts without instruction. You notice the rods carried before him, the number of men at his side, the space that opens as he passes. No one explains what you are seeing, yet everyone responds correctly. In ancient Rome, authority is not held in one place. It is divided across offices, limited by time, checked by equals, and made visible in ways that can be recognized instantly. A man may command in one moment and hold nothing the next. Another may stop him without raising his voice. Power moves, overlaps, and resists settling. In this archive, you will follow how authority is distributed between Senate, magistrates, and emperor, how it is limited, how it is recognized, and how it continues to function even as it begins to concentrate. If this quiet examination brings you rest, you are welcome to continue. A vote is about to be called, but before the presiding magistrate completes the motion, another official shifts forward with clear intent to intervene. The movement is small, but it carries consequences. The action does not proceed automatically. It pauses within reach of interruption. You observe immediately in this setting that authority is not designed to move cleanly in one direction. The system reveals its first condition. Power is arranged to resist concentration before it is allowed to operate. This is not a reaction to misuse. It is a structure built in advance. Authority is shaped so that it cannot settle fully in one place, even when held by the highest office. The mechanism begins with distribution. No central office exists that holds all authority. Instead, power is divided across multiple institutions and roles. Each carries a portion defined by scope and function. This division is not neat. It overlaps deliberately. A decision made in one area may fall under the interest or authority of another. This creates contact between offices that prevents isolation. You remain within the setting and observe that no action is free from potential response. The design assumes that concentration will occur if left unchecked. The solution is not to trust restraint. The solution is to embed limits directly into the structure. A magistrate may hold significant authority, but he does not hold it alone. Another magistrate of equal rank may act alongside him. The Senate may influence his decisions. A tribune may halt his action. Authority is surrounded on all sides. This arrangement reflects a long-standing condition within Roman political culture. The memory of kingship is not treated as distant history. It functions as an active constraint. Offices are designed in a way that avoids resemblance to a singular ruler. No role is permitted to become permanent. No role is permitted to act without exposure to others. You begin to see that prevention is built into the system at multiple levels. Time limits restrict duration, collegiality divides authority within the same office, veto powers allow interruption, legal boundaries define scope. These are not separate features added for safety. They are the system itself. Remove them and the structure no longer functions as intended. The effect is visible in how decisions are made. A proposal does not move forward based on one individual's will. It moves through a field of conditions. Each condition must allow it to continue. If one condition blocks it, the action stops. This creates a system where authority is active but never secure. You observe that this produces tension rather than stability. The system does not aim to eliminate conflict, it uses it. By placing authority in positions where it can be challenged, it ensures that no single office can dominate without resistance. Conflict becomes a method of control. Authority is exercised within opposition. You begin to understand that this arrangement affects behavior. A magistrate does not act as if he holds complete power. He acts with awareness of the limits that surround him. He anticipates resistance. He considers the response of others before proceeding. This awareness shapes how authority is used. You observe that ambition still exists within the system. Individuals seek office, influence, and recognition. The structure does not remove these motivations. Instead, it channels them into roles that are already constrained. A man may seek the highest office, but once there, he operates within limits that he did not design. Authority is something he enters, not something he defines. You remain focused on the environment in which these actions occur. The system is not silent about its limits. They are visible in the presence of multiple officials, in the procedures that allow interruption, and in the expectation that no decision is final until it passes through several points. Each of these points exists to prevent accumulation. You begin to see that authority in Rome is not fragile. It is durable because it is divided. The system does not depend on the character of individuals to maintain balance. It depends on structure. That structure ensures that power remains distributed even when individuals attempt to extend it. The fear that established this system does not need to be repeated in speech. It is present in every arrangement, in every office, and in every interaction between authorities. It continues to operate without being named. Authority begins under this condition. It is granted but never allowed to settle. A magistrate takes his seat and is immediately recognized in a different way than moments before. The change is not personal, it is structural. The same individual now carries authority that did not exist outside this position. You observe that the system does not attach power to the individual. It attaches power to the office. This distinction governs how authority functions. The office defines what can be done. It determines jurisdiction, scope, and duration. The individual who holds it does not expand these boundaries. He operates within them. His actions are valid because they are issued from a recognized position, not because of his personal standing. Authority is granted through structure. You begin to see that different offices carry different forms of power. Imperium allows command, including military authority and the ability to enforce decisions. Other offices carry administrative or financial responsibilities. Each role is defined with precision. No single office includes all functions. Power is segmented. You observe how this segmentation prevents accumulation. A magistrate may hold significant authority within one domain, but he cannot extend it into another without holding the appropriate office. A praetor does not command armies. A quaestor does not preside over major assemblies. Each remains within defined limits. Authority does not expand automatically. You begin to understand that this arrangement requires recognition from others. A command is followed because it is issued from an office that is understood within the system. Without that recognition, the same instruction carries no force. The system provides the framework that makes authority effective. Legitimacy is tied to position. You observe what happens when a term ends. The magistrate leaves the office, and with that departure, the authority attached to it disappears. The individual continues to exist within the system, but without the legal capacity he held before. The change is immediate and complete. Authority does not persist beyond the role. You begin to see that this prevents authority from becoming personal property. A man cannot carry the power of his office into private life. He cannot issue commands based on a position he no longer holds. The system removes authority at the end of the term and assigns it to the next office holder. Power returns to the structure. You observe that influence remains separate from authority. Reputation, wealth, and connections continue to shape how an individual is treated. These factors may support or enhance his ability to gain future office, but they do not replace the formal authority granted by the system. The distinction remains clear. You begin to understand that this separation is necessary for the system to function. If authority were tied to individuals, it could accumulate over time. By attaching it to offices, the system ensures that power is redistributed regularly. Each new office holder receives the same defined authority regardless of personal background. The structure remains constant while individuals change. You observe that this creates predictability. The powers of each office are known, the limits are understood. Others within the system can anticipate how a magistrate will act based on the role he holds. This allows coordination between different parts of the system. Authority becomes legible, and you begin to see that this legibility supports interaction. When a magistrate issues a decision, others know whether they must comply, challenge, or ignore it. The response is determined by the office, not the individual. This reduces uncertainty and maintains order. The system defines how authority is received. You observe that this arrangement also reinforces accountability. Actions taken while in office can be evaluated after the term ends. The individual no longer holds the authority that protected him during his tenure. He becomes subject to the same legal processes as others. Authority is temporary, but its consequences remain. You begin to understand that this creates a cycle. A man seeks office, holds authority for a defined period, and then returns to a position without it. If he seeks power again, he must re-enter the system through the same structures. No one remains in possession of authority. You remain within this framework and observe how power moves. It is assigned, exercised, and removed. The office persists, but the individual does not carry its authority beyond the term. Authority belongs to the position. The individual passes through it, then leaves it behind. A matter is introduced for consideration, but no order is issued from the place where it is discussed. Men sit in ranked arrangement, each having held authority before, each no longer holding it in the same form. They speak, assess, and shape what will follow, yet no direct command leaves this chamber. You observe that this body does not function as a ruling authority in the simplest sense. The Senate does not operate by issuing binding laws that enforce themselves. It does not carry out decisions with its own mechanisms. Instead, it produces guidance that must pass outward through magistrates who hold the capacity to act. The system reveals its structure. Authority is separated from execution. The mechanism is based on influence that accumulates without direct enforcement. The Senate issues formal opinions known as senatus consulta. These are advisory in strict legal terms. They do not compel action in the way a magistrate's command does. Yet in practice they shape behavior with considerable force. A magistrate who ignores the Senate does not break a law automatically, but he places himself in opposition to a body that defines expectations. You observe how this expectation operates. Magistrates rely on the Senate for alignment, support, and continuity. Decisions made without regard for senatorial guidance risk isolation. Future cooperation may be withheld. Financial or political support may be limited. The Senate does not command, but it establishes the conditions under which commands are viable. Influence functions through consequence rather than direct enforcement. You begin to see that the Senate's strength comes from continuity. Membership is long-term. Senators remain in position across many cycles of magistrates. They observe repeated patterns of governance. They retain knowledge of past decisions, prior conflicts, and established procedures. This memory allows them to guide current actions with reference to previous outcomes. Authority gathers slowly here. You observe that nearly all senators have held magistracies before entering this chamber. They understand the offices that now execute authority. They recognize the limits, the pressures, and the risks. Their guidance reflects experience within the same system they now influence. The Senate becomes a repository of institutional knowledge. You begin to understand that this knowledge shapes decisions beyond the chamber itself. Financial control is a central area of influence. The Senate oversees the Treasury, allocation of funds for military campaigns, public works and administrative functions passes through its approval. Magistrates may propose or execute, but the Senate determines what resources are available. Authority is constrained by what can be funded. You observe that foreign policy also passes through this body. Envoys are received, alliances are considered, decisions regarding war and peace are debated and framed. While a magistrate may command forces or carry out policy, the Senate defines the direction and context of these actions. Influence extends into areas that require continuity. You begin to see that the Senate operates above the short-term nature of magistracies. Magistrates rotate through office with limited terms. The Senate remains. It provides a layer that persists while individuals change. This persistence stabilizes the system, ensuring that decisions are not made without reference to prior structure. Authority is shaped over time, not in isolated moments. You observe that the Senate does not replace other parts of the system. It does not eliminate the role of magistrates. It does not absorb the functions of assemblies. It exists alongside them, influencing their actions without directly controlling them. This maintains the distributed nature of authority. No single body holds all functions. You begin to understand that this arrangement allows influence to exceed formal definition. The Senate's power is not easily measured in legal terms. It does not appear as a single authority that can be quantified. It is present in decisions, in expectations, and in the alignment of actions across different parts of the system. Authority operates through presence rather than command. You observe how magistrates respond to this presence. A magistrate preparing to act considers how the Senate will receive his decision. He may seek approval in advance. He may adjust his actions to align with prevailing opinion. He may avoid direct conflict to preserve future standing. Behavior adapts to influence. You begin to see that this dynamic maintains balance. The Senate cannot enforce its will directly. Magistrates cannot ignore it without consequence. Each depends on the other. This interdependence prevents either from becoming fully dominant. Authority remains distributed. You remain within the chamber and observe how decisions take shape without being executed. The Senate defines direction, establishes expectations, and provides continuity. It does not rule in a simple sense, but its influence moves through every part of the system. A dispute is brought forward, and a magistrate presides over its resolution. Procedures are followed, evidence is considered, a decision is issued within the limits defined by the office. The process is structured, visible, and carried out in real time. You observe that this is where authority becomes operational. The system reveals that magistrates form the layer through which governance is executed, while other parts of the structure guide, influence, or shape decisions. Magistrates act. They translate authority into concrete outcomes. The mechanism is based on defined roles. Each magistracy carries specific responsibilities. Consuls hold the highest level of executive authority. They command armies, preside over major assemblies, and represent the state in formal capacities. Praetors oversee judicial matters, managing courts and interpreting law. Quaestors handle financial administration, maintaining records and managing funds. Aediles supervise markets, public order, and urban maintenance. Censors conduct the census and oversee classifications within society. Authority is distributed across functions. You observe that no single magistrate controls the entire system. Each office is limited to a defined jurisdiction. A consul does not perform the duties of a quaestor. A praetor does not manage the census. These boundaries prevent authority from expanding across all areas of governance. Power remains segmented. You begin to see how these roles interact. Decisions in one area may affect another. Financial management influences military capability. Judicial rulings affect administrative outcomes. Urban maintenance intersects with economic activity. These connections create interaction between offices. The system operates through coordination. You observe that magistrates serve as points of contact between the structure and the population. Citizens engage with authority through these offices. Legal disputes are resolved in courts. Markets are regulated, public works are organized, resources are distributed. Each interaction makes the system visible. Authority becomes tangible through action. You begin to understand that magistrates operate within defined procedures. They do not act without structure. Assemblies are convened according to established rules. Legal cases follow recognized processes. Administrative decisions are guided by prior frameworks. These procedures ensure that authority is exercised consistently. The system defines how action occurs. You observe that magistrates are constrained not only by their roles, but also by the presence of other authorities. A decision may be subject to review. An action may be challenged. A proposal may be blocked. These constraints shape how magistrates perform their duties. They must act with awareness of the broader system. Authority exists within limits. You begin to see that time also affects their actions. Magistrates hold office for limited terms. Their authority is temporary. Decisions must be made within a defined period. Long-term projects require coordination with future office holders. This creates continuity through sequence rather than permanence. The system persists through rotation. You observe that magistrates contribute to a larger process. Each office holder performs a segment of governance. The system continues as responsibilities pass from one to another. No individual completes the entire structure. The machinery operates through successive actions. Authority is maintained through continuity of roles. You begin to understand that this arrangement allows the system to function without centralization. No single magistrate directs all activity. Instead, authority is exercised across multiple points. Each point is defined, limited, and connected to others. The machinery moves through distribution. You remain within this environment and observe how governance is carried out. Magistrates act within defined roles, under visible constraints, through structured procedures. They do not hold the system. They operate it. Two officials hold the same office at the same time. Each has the same title, the same legal capacity, and the same access to the powers defined by that role. When one prepares to act, the other does not stand outside the decision. He stands within it, able to support, match, or prevent what is about to occur. You observe that authority here is divided inside the office itself. The system reveals a core mechanism. Power is not only distributed across different roles, it is also split within the same role. This arrangement is known as collegiality. It places more than one individual in possession of the same authority at the same time. The mechanism creates immediate friction. Each office holder operates with awareness that his actions may be checked by an equal. There is no internal hierarchy within the office. One consul does not outrank another consul. One praetor does not command another praetor of the same rank. Their authority is parallel. You begin to see how this shapes behavior. A decision is no longer a single act. It becomes a point of interaction between two wills. If both agree, the action proceeds smoothly. If they differ, the process slows, alters, or stops. This is not an unintended complication. It is the intended function of the system. Authority is forced to pass through more than one judgment. You observe that each office holder retains the capacity to act independently within the scope of the office. A consul may lead a military force. Another consul may conduct administrative duties within the city. Their actions do not always overlap, but the possibility of overlap remains. The system allows both coordination and divergence. You begin to understand that this structure embeds oversight directly into the office. There is no need for a higher authority to monitor every action. The presence of an equal serves that function. Each office holder observes the other. This observation carries the potential for response. If one acts beyond accepted limits, the other can intervene. Monitoring is internal. You observe that this arrangement distributes responsibility. Decisions made within the office are not attributed to a single individual alone. Both office holders share the authority. This reduces the possibility that one person can shape the office entirely according to his own interests over time. Authority remains divided even at its highest level. You begin to see how this affects the pace of governance. Actions may require agreement or at least tolerance between office holders. Disagreement introduces delay. Negotiation becomes necessary. This slows the system, but it also prevents rapid consolidation of power. Speed is exchanged for control. You observe that collegiality does not eliminate conflict. Rivalry can exist within the same office. Each office holder may pursue different priorities. Their actions may intersect in ways that create tension. This tension is not external to the system. It is part of how the system operates. Authority is exercised within a space of potential opposition. You begin to understand that this structure reinforces the broader pattern of distributed power. Even when an office carries significant authority, it is not given to a single individual. The system ensures that no position becomes complete in one set of hands. Power is always subject to another presence within the same role. No office is singular. You observe that this arrangement also influences how others interact with the office. Those seeking decisions or support must consider both office holders. Alignment with one does not guarantee alignment with the other. This adds another layer to how authority is navigated. The office becomes a point of negotiation. You begin to see that collegiality connects to other constraints within the system. Time limits restrict duration. Veto powers allow interruption. Legal boundaries define scope. Collegiality ensures that even within those boundaries, authority is not unified. The structure remains layered. You remain within this arrangement and observe how authority operates when it is shared. Each office holder acts with full capacity, but not alone. Authority exists, but it is always accompanied. A magistrate enters office with a defined beginning and a defined end. From the moment authority is granted, its duration is already fixed. The term does not extend beyond what has been assigned. When the period concludes, the office passes to another. You observe that time functions as a structural limit. The system reveals that authority is not only defined by scope and jurisdiction, it is also defined by duration. Most magistracies are held for 1 year. This limit is consistent and expected. It is not adjusted to suit the individual holding the office. The mechanism is based on rotation. Authority is assigned, exercised, and then removed. The same office is then assigned to a new individual. This cycle continues without interruption. The office persists, but the office holder changes. Power moves through sequence. You begin to see how this prevents accumulation. If authority could be held indefinitely, it could consolidate. Relationships could deepen into control. Influence could expand into dominance. By limiting the term, the system interrupts this process. No individual remains in position long enough to secure full control over the office. Time restricts continuity of personal power. You observe that this creates a condition of urgency. A magistrate must act within a limited window. Decisions, policies, and actions must be initiated and carried out before the term ends. This affects how authority is exercised. There is pressure to act, but also awareness of what will follow. Authority is temporary, but its effects are not. You begin to understand that actions taken during the term extend beyond it. Once out of office, the individual no longer holds formal authority. He returns to a position within the system without the protections of the role. Decisions made during the term may be reviewed. Misuse of power may lead to legal consequences. Accountability follows authority. You observe that this creates a form of restraint that extends beyond the term itself. A magistrate must consider not only what can be done while in office, but what may happen afterward. The end of the term exposes actions to scrutiny. This influences behavior during the term. Authority is exercised with awareness of its conclusion. You begin to see how rotation contributes to continuity. Although individuals change, the offices remain. Each new magistrate inherits the responsibilities and frameworks established by those before him. The system does not reset. It continues through successive office holders. The structure persists through change. You observe that this creates a balance between stability and variation. Stability comes from the consistent design of the offices. Variation comes from the individuals who occupy them. Each brings different priorities, decisions, and approaches. The system absorbs these differences without losing its form. Authority adapts within fixed boundaries. You begin to understand that this arrangement also shapes political careers. Individuals move through a sequence of offices, often referred to as the cursus honorum. Each role builds on the previous one. Advancement depends on prior service and reputation. Authority is experienced in stages, not held continuously in one form. Power is structured as progression. You observe that this progression reinforces the temporary nature of each office. No single role defines a career. Each is a part of a larger sequence. The individual moves through the system, gaining and losing authority at each stage. This prevents long-term possession of a single form of power. Authority remains in motion. You begin to see how time interacts with other constraints. Collegiality divides authority within the office. Veto powers allow interruption. Legal boundaries define scope. Time ensures that even within these limits, authority does not remain fixed. The system continues to shift. You remain within this cycle and observe how authority is granted and removed. Each term begins, operates, and ends. Time ensures that power does not stay. A measure is brought forward and prepared for execution. The steps have been followed. The authority to act is present. Just before the action takes effect, another official intervenes. The process stops, not because it failed, but because the system allows it to be stopped. You observe that in Rome, authority includes the capacity to prevent action, not only to carry it out. The system reveals a second direction of power. It does not move only forward, it also moves across and against itself. This is not accidental. It is designed. The mechanism rests on formal rights of interruption and a wider field of procedural resistance. Certain offices hold explicit veto power. The tribunes of the plebs possess the authority known as intercessio. When exercised, it halts the action of another magistrate. The halt is immediate and recognized. It does not require approval from a higher authority. The system accepts the interruption as valid. One office can stop another. You begin to see that this power is not limited to a single role. Magistrates of equal rank may obstruct each other. A consul may counter the act of another consul. A praetor may oppose a fellow praetor. These interventions do not move upward through a hierarchy. They occur at the same level. Authority is contested laterally. You observe that obstruction is not confined to formal veto alone. Religious procedure introduces additional points of resistance. A magistrate may declare unfavorable auspices. When such a declaration is accepted, the action cannot proceed within that setting. The system recognizes this as a legitimate interruption grounded in established practice. Procedure can stop action. You begin to understand that rules governing assemblies also provide resistance. Meetings follow strict orders. Improper sequence, incorrect notice, or violation of form can halt proceedings. A proposal may fail not because of its content, but because the procedure was not observed correctly. Form controls outcome. You observe that these mechanisms operate continuously. A magistrate preparing to act must anticipate them. He must consider whether another official will intervene. He must account for procedural requirements that could delay or block the action. He must align with expectations that reduce the likelihood of resistance. Authority adapts to the presence of interruption. You begin to see that this produces a specific environment. Decisions are not simply made and executed. They are proposed, tested, and often resisted. Movement forward depends on surviving these points of resistance. An action that passes through them carries different weight than one that does not encounter them. Endurance becomes part of legitimacy. You observe that obstruction is not treated as failure. It is recognized as a function of the system. The ability to stop an action ensures that authority does not operate unchecked. It provides a counterbalance within the structure itself. No external force is required to intervene. The system regulates itself. You begin to understand that this affects how magistrates behave. A magistrate may seek agreement before acting. He may adjust proposals to avoid objection. He may delay action until conditions are more favorable. These adjustments are not signs of weakness. They are responses to a system that requires navigation. Authority becomes strategic. You observe that this arrangement prevents rapid consolidation. Even if a magistrate holds significant authority, he cannot act without considering the potential for interruption. The system ensures that others retain the capacity to intervene at critical points. No action is entirely secure. You begin to see how this connects to other layers. Collegiality divides authority within offices, time limits duration, legal hierarchy allows appeal, veto and procedural resistance ensure that within these structures, authority is never free from challenge. The system remains active at every point. You remain within this environment and observe how movement occurs. Authority advances, meets resistance, adjusts, and sometimes stops entirely. The right to act exists. So does the right to prevent. A decision is issued, but it does not remain fixed at the point where it is made. The individual affected seeks review. The matter moves beyond the original authority. It enters another layer where it may be examined, confirmed, or altered. You observe that authority in Rome is arranged in levels that allow movement upward. The system reveals that no single decision is always final within its initial context. Certain actions can be challenged. This challenge follows defined paths. Authority is structured so that it can be reviewed under specific conditions. The mechanism operates through hierarchy and appeal. Lower magistrates exercise authority within their scope. Their decisions may be subject to review by higher magistrates or by assemblies. This creates a layered structure where authority is not isolated at one point. Power can be redirected. You begin to see how this functions through the right of provocatio. A citizen facing certain punishments may appeal to a higher authority, often to the people assembled. This right introduces a vertical movement within the system. Authority exercised at one level does not remain absolute when conditions for appeal are met. The system provides a path upward. You observe that this path is not unlimited. Not every decision can be appealed. Not every authority is subject to review in the same way. The structure defines where movement is allowed and where it is not. These limits maintain order while still allowing challenge. Hierarchy is structured, not open-ended. You begin to understand that different forms of authority behave differently. Within the city, civil authority is subject to layers of appeal and review. Outside the city, especially in military contexts, authority becomes more concentrated. A commander in the field holds imperium with fewer immediate checks. Context alters the structure. You observe that jurisdiction defines how authority applies. A magistrate's power is limited by location and function. Within those limits, he may act with full capacity. Outside them, his authority does not extend. This creates boundaries that prevent authority from spreading across all areas. Power is confined by scope. You begin to see how these boundaries interact with appeal. A challenge must be directed to the appropriate level. It must follow established procedures. The system does not allow random escalation. Movement through the hierarchy is guided by rules. Channels define direction. You observe that these channels may intersect. A decision may involve multiple authorities. A matter may pass through different levels depending on its nature. This creates a structure that is not strictly linear. Authority flows through overlapping paths. Hierarchy is layered, not simple. You begin to understand that this complexity is intentional. By allowing authority to move, the system prevents it from becoming fixed in a single position. At the same time, by defining the paths of movement, it maintains control over how challenges occur. Flexibility exists within structure. You observe that this arrangement requires awareness. Those who engage with the system must understand where authority lies and how it can be challenged. The ability to navigate these layers becomes part of how the system functions in practice. Authority is accessible but not simple. You begin to see how this connects to other elements. Veto powers allow immediate interruption. Collegiality divides authority within offices. Time limits duration. Legal hierarchy provides a structured path for review. Each layer reinforces the others. The system operates through interaction. You remain within this structure and observe how decisions move. Authority is exercised, challenged, and sometimes redirected. It does not remain in one place. It travels through defined layers. A procession moves through the street, and before any action is taken, the arrangement itself communicates what is about to occur. Attendants walk in front of a magistrate. Objects are carried upright. The spacing between individuals is deliberate. Those watching do not need instruction. Recognition is immediate. You observe that authority in Rome is made visible as a condition of function. The system reveals that power is not only defined in law or exercised through action. It is displayed in a consistent and structured way so that it can be recognized without explanation. This visibility allows the system to operate in public space with clarity. The mechanism relies on symbols, arrangement, and repetition. Lictors accompany certain magistrates. They carry fasces, bundles of rods bound together, sometimes including an axe depending on the context. The fasces represent the authority to punish and enforce. Their presence indicates that the magistrate's power is active. You observe that the number of lictors is not arbitrary. A consul is accompanied by more lictors than a praetor. The count signals rank. Without a word, observers can distinguish levels of authority based on how many attendants are present. This numerical distinction creates a visible hierarchy. Authority is measured through display. You begin to see how objects reinforce position. The curule chair marks certain offices. It is used only by magistrates who hold specific forms of authority. When it is placed, it defines a space where official action occurs. The individual who sits in it is recognized as exercising that office. Position is anchored through physical markers. You observe that clothing functions in the same way. The toga praetexta, edged with purple, identifies magistrates and certain officials. The color is not decorative. It signals status within the system. The garment distinguishes the office holder from others in the same space. Appearance communicates authority. You begin to understand that arrangement extends beyond objects and clothing. Seating in assemblies follows strict order. Those of higher rank occupy specific positions. The order of speaking reflects hierarchy. Processions move in defined sequences that reinforce rank and role. Structure is visible in movement. You observe that these elements are repeated consistently. The same symbols appear in similar contexts. The same arrangements are used in public gatherings. Over time, these patterns become familiar. Recognition becomes immediate because the system presents itself in the same way repeatedly. Authority becomes legible through repetition. You begin to see that this visibility reduces uncertainty. Citizens interacting with the system do not need detailed knowledge of every office. The presence of symbols provides enough information to determine how to respond. Compliance, challenge, or deference can occur based on what is seen. Recognition supports function. You observe that visibility also reinforces legitimacy. When authority is displayed consistently, it becomes part of the environment. It is expected. It is understood. The system does not need to explain itself at every moment because its structure is already visible. Authority is confirmed through presence. You begin to understand that this arrangement also exposes authority to observation. Actions taken under visible markers are witnessed. The same symbols that grant recognition also draw attention. Authority is not hidden. It operates in public, where it can be seen and evaluated. Visibility creates accountability. You observe that the system defines when authority is active. When the symbols are present, the office is in effect. When they are absent, the authority associated with that office is not being exercised in that space. This distinction allows clear transitions between official and private action. Authority appears and withdraws with its markers. You begin to see how this connects to the broader structure. The office defines power. Time limits duration. Collegiality divides authority. Veto allows interruption. Legal hierarchy provides movement. Symbols make all of this visible. The system ensures that authority is not only structured but seen. You remain within the scene and observe how recognition operates. Authority is carried, arranged, and displayed. It is understood before it is explained. A single figure holds multiple powers that were once separated. The offices that defined authority still exist. The Senate continues to meet. Magistrates continue to serve. Assemblies still gather. The structure remains in place, but its balance has shifted. You observe that authority begins to concentrate without removing the forms that once distributed it. The system reveals a transition rather than a replacement. The emperor does not abolish the existing structure. Instead, he accumulates powers that were previously held by different offices. Tribunician authority allows him to intervene and protect. Consular authority provides executive capacity. Control of military command places the armed forces under his direction. The mechanism combines separate authorities into one position. You begin to see that this accumulation changes how the system functions. Where authority was once divided across multiple roles, it now gathers in a single individual. The offices that remain continue to operate, but their independence is reduced. Their actions occur within a framework shaped by the emperor's presence. Power becomes centralized within existing structures. You observe that the Senate continues its activities. It advises, discusses, and influences. However, its role is altered. The presence of a figure who holds consolidated authority changes how its guidance is received and acted upon. Influence remains, but it operates under new conditions. The balance shifts toward the center. You begin to understand how magistrates function in this arrangement. They continue to perform their duties. Judicial processes continue. Administrative tasks are carried out. Public functions remain in place. However, their authority is now framed by a higher concentration of power that can intervene across multiple domains. Execution remains distributed, but control is not. You observe that the emperor operates through existing channels. He does not need to replace institutions. He uses them. Decisions move through the same structures, but with a different source of authority behind them. The system provides pathways that can carry centralized power. The structure becomes a framework for a single will. You begin to see that outward continuity is maintained. Titles, offices, and procedures remain recognizable. This continuity allows the system to function without appearing entirely transformed. The forms of the Republic persist even as their function changes. Change occurs within familiar shapes. You observe that the mechanisms that once limited authority still exist. Collegiality remains in lower offices, terms continue to rotate, veto powers exist, legal hierarchy remains in place. However, their ability to counter the central figure is reduced. The concentration of authority alters how these mechanisms function. Limits remain, but their effect is diminished. You begin to understand that this creates a different kind of stability. Decisions can move more directly. The need for negotiation at the highest level is reduced. At the same time, the distribution that once prevented concentration is no longer fully effective. Control becomes more efficient, but less divided. You observe that authority now operates in two layers. The visible structure continues to distribute roles and responsibilities. Beneath that, a central authority holds the capacity to influence or override across those roles. The system appears layered, but the layers align toward a single point. Power gathers while structure remains. You begin to see how this arrangement preserves order. The system does not collapse. It adapts. The same offices, symbols, and procedures continue to function. The difference lies in how authority moves through them. The shape changes without disappearing. You remain within this structure and observe its operation. One man holds what was once divided. The system continues to function, but its balance has shifted. The movement slows as the streets begin to clear. The figures who carried authority pass out of view, and the spaces they shaped settle back into quiet order. What remains is not the moment itself, but the structure that continues beneath it. Here in the archive, even the smallest systems hold entire worlds together. If this quiet history brings you rest, you are welcome to return.